Class! 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 Shut up! Now, if you know comedy history, you know that that's a great Cheech and Chong skit from way back when.
Good morning, class. Good morning, class. Class.
If you don't know comedy history, you're missing out. One thing that I've learned is that a lot of people don't know BMX racing history. You guys don't know your roots. You're missing out. After a little bit of a conversation that I had with Gork and a couple of parents out at the races in Bakersfield and just people in general, I've decided that today, for our Tech Tip Tuesday, it's gonna be a little bit different. Today, we wanna teach you a little bit about your BMX racing history. Come on in! So guys, at the intro, you saw a little bit of a comedy bit. Cheech and Chong does it way better than I did. That little bit of comedy history is something that I grew up with, along with all of my BMX racing history. And there's a lot of BMX racing history that goes on and on through the years, just as there is with any sport. Most sports, baseball, basketball, football, soccer, you know who the greats were. You know who Pele was. You know why he was the greatest soccer player ever. Do you know who the best BMX racer ever was? Do you know who Pete Lonkarevich was? Do you know who Gary Ellis was? Let me give you this one. Who's Bubba Harris? Do you know why he was so great? And if we want to get into the female side of it, who is Sherry Elliott? Who is Samantha Cools? Come on, you've got to know. This is part of what makes you a better BMX racer, by knowing your history and knowing the skills that they had, knowing the equipment that they rode, and knowing what made them such a great BMX racer. Luckily for you guys, there's a lot of resources out there for you to be able to consume the information. Today, I'm wearing a shirt from 15 BMX. 15 BMX is a great website. Not only is it a great website, it's a great resource for you to be able to learn modern history for what's going on in BMX. It's gonna teach you what the current racers are riding. It's gonna give you current interviews with the racers. This is stuff that you need to absorb, because magazines, they're gone. You get Pull Magazine if you subscribe to USA BMX 5 times a year, 6 times a year. I'm not sure how many times it shows up in my mailbox. It's not enough. We need it more. But there's other great websites out there. There's 15 BMX, there's USA BMX, there's Pull. There used to be BMX Mania. There used to be BMX News. There are other great sites like Vintage BMX, Old School Mags, BMX Society. Part of what makes things great in this current day is that USA BMX has now set up an actual BMX museum. Back in November, I went to the USA BMX Grand. My buddy Gork, he and I have been friends for 40 years. Gork is now the curator of the USA BMX Museum. And with this, what he's been trying to put together is a 100-year history of BMX. I know that that sounds a little strange. He's trying to go through a timeline, and he has it set, I believe, from 1967, from when he thinks BMX started, and I could be wrong on that timeline. Gork, correct me. Maybe it was 1963. I know it was in the 60s when he thinks BMX started, and he has it going all the way forward to 2063 or 2067. And he's got this great timeline. On there, it's marking off different milestones. When certain races happened, when the first USA BMX Grands happened, when the first pro title was crowned, when the first pro race happened, when BMX got inducted into the Olympics, when the first amateur races were starting to happen, when the sanctions merged. He's got a lot of cool stuff up on the timeline. But aside from the timeline, he has a room that's filled with BMX racing history. And in that room, he has bikes from all riders throughout the ages that have been historic bikes. He's got bikes that were the original Schwinn Stingrays that were cut up and modified. He's got some of the original Webcos, the original Mongooses. He's got some of the original SE bikes. He's got some of the original Redlines. He's got some of the original Torkers. He's got some side hacks. He has, luckily, one of our Supercrosses. He's got one of our Supercrosses up on the wall right next to my buddy Pistol Pete Lonkarovich, who's won 4 BMX USA Pro titles. So, I mean, that's a badass title. I mean, think about that. Do you know how hard it is to win 1 pro title? I've never won one. Haven't ever come close. Pistol, he's won 4 of them. That's something that you've got to put a lot of dedication in. You got to know how to make sure your bike is running right, and you've got to know exactly how to train for it. You've got to put in the dedication. You've got to put in the time, and you've got to make sure you're still having fun. Interesting side note, Pistol, he's still racing. We just sent him a new Supercross. He just grabbed one of our Pro XXL Cruisers in mirror polish because he likes chrome. I mean, here's a guy who he could have given it up. He could have said, hey, guess what? I'm done with BMX. But BMX is a fun thing for him. He loves it. And he rides for fun. He races for fun. And he's trying to give that knowledge back to the kids. He's actually going to start his own podcast and put some things into the ether, or whatever you want to call this YouTube world, as we're trying to build BMX up to the top of the algorithm, whatever the algorithm is. Main thing, make sure you like and subscribe. Get this BMX thing up there. There's so much history that's in this museum. I was blessed and lucky enough to be given a private tour by Gork and by BA. I got to go upstairs. I got to see this custom conference table that they have that was made out of a piece of tree from the old Grass Valley track. You remember the old Grass Valley track from BMX back in the 70s? There used to be a tree right in the middle of the track, and they had to wrap it with a mattress so that, you know, you'd come bombing down the hill, boom, smack into the tree sometimes. Well, luckily it had a mattress wrapped around it. Well, when they ended up taking the tree out, BA was smart enough to be able to get a piece of that, and that's now for the conference room laid out there at USA BMX. So now every time they have a meeting, part of it is done on some BMX history and BMX legacy. Here in that museum, there's pieces of bikes. I mean, here you'll see the bike, this one here, this is Billy Grigg's bike. It's his O'Haro from when he was going for the #1 pro title. He got #2 that year, but I was actually proud looking at it. If you look closely, the wheels that are on that bike, I laced those wheels for Billy. I race laced them for him on those Campy C record hubs. And those tech leathers that he was wearing, I made those for him. That was 40 years ago. That's some BMX history. A lot of people don't necessarily know who Billy Griggs is. Billy and I went to high school together. Billy was my roommate for a short period of time. Billy's one of the main designers over at Chase Bicycles now, one of our main competitors. This is all little bits of BMX history that people need to know, because by having this knowledge and knowing about your sport, it's going to be able to help you. Learning why he ran a wider rim, learning why he ran a certain profile of the tire, learning why certain gear ratios work. All this old BMX history is much better than just some factory dad who just showed up and started racing 6 months ago and thinks he knows it all, is just gonna pop out and tell you something. You need to understand there's been a legacy to this sport. If you get a chance, I know spring break's coming up and a lot of people are gonna be able to make some trips. Tulsa has one of their nationals coming up, book a trip, head on over to the USA BMX Museum, go see Gork, go take a look at the museum, walk around. I know personally, myself, I was amazed. One of the first things I saw when I walked up, this brick dedicated to Deanna Edwards. Deanna was an old factory rider of ours. I worked with her when I was over at GT. She was a factory rider back then. Unfortunately, she passed away, and there's a memoriam brick right there when you walk up. USA BMX is doing a lot to dedicate to the history of the sport, and the reason that history of the sport exists is for you guys to be able to learn, and for you to capture that history, and for you to retain it, and for you to remember it. It's your sport, and you need to remember what goes on with it. It's something to where by knowing your past, you're going to be able to do your future better. I know that sounds a little strange. If you know how something was done, if you know a little bit about what was going on in the past, it's going to make it easier for you to move forward. And if you truly enjoy this sport, it's going to really offer you an opportunity to have more fun with it because you know more about it. If you go back and watch the video that Eddie and I sat down and had a little bit of a chat on, Eddie and I have been friends for 40 years, 45 years, something like that. There's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of stories, and we joked around that it was part one. It was part one because there's so much of BMX knowledge and BMX history that we need to get pushed out there that we really want to share with you guys so that you guys can consume it in little micro pieces and be able to digest it and be able to learn to make it be a better time for you and for you to be able to learn a little bit more. So just as you learn comedy history, just as you learn soccer history, just as you learn basketball history, just as you learn baseball history, I mean, heck, we all know who Shaquille O'Neal is. We all know who Babe Ruth is. We all know who Pele is. Those sports made those heroes and pushed them forward. And we need to do the same for our history. And we need to do the same for our heroes. We need to make sure that the names of Bubba Harris are not forgotten. Gary Ellis is not forgotten. Danny Nelson is not forgotten. You know, there's too many names that they just get lost in the ether, lost in the ether, and they shouldn't be, because there's a lot of very important people that have gone on to lay the foundation for this sport that you love, and it's important that you know who they were, why they were, and what they've done, and why they deserve the credit, and why they deserve a pat on the back and a hug when you see them. So with that coming to mind, this last weekend when I ran out to the Bakersfield National, one of the first people I saw was Afro Bob. A lot of people don't know who Afro Bob is. Everybody thinks that Robert DeWilde, proper name, I still call him Afro Bob, even though he deserves to be called, Bob or Robert or whatever a official title is, but he's a good friend. They don't know the history of what Robert has done. They don't know the titles that Robert's earned. They just know him as a coach out there at Bellflower. It's sad that a lot of our legacy players, a lot of our historic BMX figures have been reduced. I know Mike Redman, great friend of mine, and a lot of people think of him as just the janitor and the trash man down at the Lake Paris track. Well, he's been running the Lake Paris track for 10 years. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves. No one knows that he was the Olympic announcer for BMX. No one knows that he's the voice on the cadence that you hear when you hear it Riders Ready. They don't know that. When they go out to the Lake Paris track, all they know is that they see him out there picking up trash, taking the trash bags out to the dumpster. It's people like him that have dedicated their life to put that in to the sport to make sure that you guys have a great sport. Redman Bikes is Mike Redman. The team that he had that won so many championships, won so many world titles, won so many factory titles, won so many bikes of the year. That's him. He's out there sweeping the track, picking up the trash. Again, people don't know that, and it's something that needs to be told. If you're just a quick Instagram guy, go onto the USA BMX History site. They've got one for the USA BMX Foundation. There's an Instagram BMX Racing History. Go check that one out. If you are a website guy, go check out, Fat BMX. Go check out their history section. Go through the BMX Mania archives. Go check out BMX Ultra. If you're over down in Australia. Not aside from Australia, they've got a great archive. 15 BMX has a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of great resources out there. You just need to search it out. By searching out that information, learning your history, it's going to be able to make you a faster BMXer. So today's Tech Tip Tuesday, it's not necessarily to tune up your bike, it's to tune up your mind. And by tuning up your mind, you're going to enjoy the sport a lot more. What do we get out of this? It makes it more fun. The more you know, the funner it is. That's what we're in the sport for, right? We want to have fun. I know today's Tech Tip Tuesday, a little bit strange, a little bit crazy. I know it started off with a weird Cheech and Chong reference. Probably should have done something different, but I wanted to get your attention. Class! Class! Shut up! Right? It's funny. Well, now I'm going to tell you another one. Class! Class! Go ride!
The first day of my vacation, I woke up. Then I went downtown to look for a job. Then I hung out in front of the drugstore. The second day of my summer vacation, I woke up. Then I went downtown to look for a job.